Senator Rice.
Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy President. I too stand today to oppose this bill, which is part of the government's attack on people's rights at work and reveals the government's true motives when it comes to industrial relations policy. Before the 2013 federal election, the government said that work choices was dead, buried and cremated. The current Prime Minister even signed a piece of paper with those very words on it: dead, buried and cremated. But just as the budget saw the beginning of the real agenda of this government beginning to shine through, we are seeing it here with respect to people's rights at work. We hear repeated claims that the Prime Minister has learnt from his mistakes, that the era of good government is just starting. I think we're on day 3. Well, the Prime Minister and his government might have learnt one thing from the John Howard era of work choices, and that is, if you come and attack people's rights at work, the people will fight back and turf you out. So this time around, they're coming for Australians' rights at work in a way which is much more sly. This bill works on one simple principle. We will come for the unions first, so that there's no one left to protect the workers when we come for them. Through increased penalties and greater powers for the Commissioner, it's claimed by the government and supporters of this bill that it's going to put corporations and unions on even footing, that organisations of workers should be treated in the same way as organisations that exist to make a profit. But this dismisses the clear differences between these organisations. Unions are required under the Fair Work Act and other legislation to be democratic organisations, but corporations are not. Unions are required to publish their accounts and financial returns every year online. Proprietary limited companies are not. If the government was serious about putting unions and corporations on an even footing, they could, of course, extend the current democratic and reporting requirements demanded of unions to corporations. But no, they're not doing that. Instead, the government is saying to organisations that represent Australian workers, we reserve the right to micromanage you in a way that we would never dream of doing to a private company. But we will impose the same penalties on you as we might on a publicly listed company. The government fails to understand that organisations of workers don't exist for the same purposes as businesses. This is where the whole argument behind this legislation falls down. Businesses exist to make a profit. That's what they do and what they are judged on. And corporations law requires directors to act in the best interest of their shareholders and to continue to make a profit. Unions, on the other hand, exist to advance the interests of the people they represent. They advise Australian workers on what they are entitled to, and they enforce these entitlements. They stand up for Australian workers. They ensure that our lowest paid workers enjoy something approaching a decent income and quality of life. Unions fight for changes to our workplace laws, not for their own benefit, and that's critical, not for their own benefit, but for the benefit of Australian workers. Unions fought for shorter working weeks. They brought us the weekend. And thanks to unions, we have penalty rates that mean that people working unsociable hours get a decent income. Unions got us annual leave. Corporations didn't say, these are great ideas, let's give these to our workers. Unions fought for them, and unions in doing this do not get a direct financial benefit for this. This is where unions and employer organisations are fundamentally different from profit-making companies, and it makes sense that they should be treated differently. There's no need for this legislation. The current laws work. They prevent union officials who get involved in union activity for their own personal benefit, and they prosecute those who do. The current laws are working. The motivation in contrast, behind this legislation is clear. The government hopes to tie up workers and their unions in abundant amounts of red tape to stop them advancing the interests of the people they exist to look out for. There's no omnibus repeal day of red tape for unions by this government. The aim of this government through this legislation is to strangle our unions in red tape. This bill is a step towards the resurrection of work choices, and the Greens will stand with unions and with workers in opposing this bill.